Observe the loudest person in the room. Now observe the quietest. One commands attention, the other commands reality. One plays the game, the other designed it. You have been taught to be the former, a noisy player in a game defined by others. But what if you could become the architect? What if the path to total victory is found not in the shout, but in the silence that precedes it? The modern world is a coliseum of perpetual, frantic competition. It is a cacophony of desperate shouts for attention, a digital and physical arena where everyone is urged to perform their strength constantly. You are trained from a young age to believe that value is synonymous with visibility. The path to success, you are told, is paved with self-promotion, aggressive networking, and the relentless broadcasting of every minor victory. In the corporate hierarchy, you're advised to speak first and loudest in meetings, to assert your presence, to ensure your voice is the one that is remembered, even if you have nothing of substance to say. On the social battlefield, you are taught to curate a perfect image of success, to project an aura of effortless superiority, to treat life as a performance for an invisible, judgmental audience. This relentless pursuit of external validation has become the dominant strategy of our time. It is the conventional path, and it is a masterfully disguised trap, a gilded cage of profound and exploitable weakness. This path is fundamentally weak because it is, at its core, entirely reactive. It forces you to dance to a rhythm set by others. Your actions are not your own. They are predetermined responses to the provocations and expectations of the world around you. When a colleague questions your idea, your training compels you to become defensive, to engage in a battle of wits and ego. When a rival celebrates a public success, you feel an immediate pressure to announce one of your own. To keep pace in a race you never agreed to run, you become a ship without a rudder, tossed violently by the waves of public opinion and the shifting winds of social trends. Your energy, your most precious and finite resource, is squandered in 1,000 meaningless skirmishes. You are putting out fires, managing perceptions, and fighting for territory on a map drawn by your competitors. In this state, you are not a strategist. You are a puppet, and your strings are being pulled by anyone clever enough to understand your predictable emotional triggers. The novice embraces this weakness, mistaking it for strength. He believes that power is a spectacle. He announces his grand ambitions, thinking it makes him appear formidable and destined for greatness, not realizing he is simply handing his enemies a blueprint of his plans. He engages in every argument, believing that winning the point is the same as winning the war, blind to the fact that his opponent may be sacrificing the argument to learn how his mind works. He displays all his capabilities openly, like a merchant laying out his finest jewels on the street, inviting thieves to see what is most valuable and where his defenses are most vulnerable. This constant performance, this desperate, insatiable need to be seen as powerful, is a catastrophic energy leak. It exhausts your spirit, it shatters your focus, and it exposes the entirety of your strategy to anyone who is truly watching. It is a loud, exhausting, and ultimately futile performance for an audience that holds no real power, and it comes at the cost of the silent, decisive victory that truly matters. Now consider the alternative, the path of the master strategist as illuminated by the ancient general Sun Tzu. This path begins not with an action, but with a radical reframing of the entire concept of victory. It is rooted in a fundamental, world-altering truth. The supreme art of war, he wrote, is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Let this principle dismantle the faulty architecture of your modern conditioning. The objective is not to meet your opponent on the field of battle and crush them in a head-on collision. The objective is to architect a situation so overwhelmingly, so psychologically advantageous to you, that the opponent's will to compete, their desire to fight, simply dissolves into dust. The battle is rendered obsolete before it is ever declared. The victory is not a dramatic event. It is the quiet, inevitable consequence of superior positioning. How is such a thing possible? It begins when you turn your gaze away from the noisy, distracting external battlefield and focus it upon the only terrain over which you have absolute control, your own mind. The first maneuver of the true strategist is not a bold action, but a deliberate and profound inaction. It is the mastery of silence. While the novice is consuming all the oxygen in the room, the master is observing. He understands that the world is a river of information, constantly flowing and offering its secrets to those who are patient and still enough to receive them. In the loud, arrogant boasts of a rival, he does not hear strength. He hears a desperate cry against a deep-seated insecurity. In the urgent, frantic actions of a competitor, he does not see ambition, he sees a profound fear of being left behind. In the idle gossip of the court, he does not hear noise. He maps the invisible currents of allegiance, resentment, power, and desire. Silence for the strategist is not emptiness, it is a weaponized vacuum. It is the vessel in which you collect the invaluable intelligence that others discard as worthless noise. This cultivated silence allows you to see the entire chessboard, to understand the intricate connections between all the pieces, while everyone else is myopically fixated on their next single predictable move. Sun Tzu instructed his generals to be subtle to the point of formlessness, mysterious to the point of soundlessness. This is not a call for physical invisibility, but for a state of profound strategic illegibility. When your rivals cannot read your intentions, when they cannot discern your emotional state, they are robbed of their ability to anticipate your actions. They are forced to fight shadows. In the vacuum of your silence, they will inevitably project their own fears, their own biases, and their own flawed assumptions onto you. They will invent intentions for you and then react to the phantoms of their own creation. In doing so, they begin the process of defeating themselves, tangled in a web of their own making, long before you have made a single overt move. The novice frantically asks, "How can I win this argument?" The master calmly asks, "How can I create conditions where this argument becomes utterly irrelevant?" The novice feels an urgent need to prove that he is strong. The master understands that appearing weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak is the timeless principle that lures an arrogant enemy into fatal miscalculations. This path demands a form of discipline that is anathema to the modern world's addiction to instant gratification. It requires the absolute conquest of your own ego. It demands that you let go of the burning need for immediate validation, for the fleeting applause of the crowd. You must learn to find a deeper satisfaction, not in the public recognition of your brilliance, but in the flawless, silent execution of an invisible, long-term plan. The world will constantly tempt you with the drama and glory of open conflict. It will call you a coward for not engaging in every petty fight, but the strategist knows that true victory is quiet, clean, and total. It is the immense power of the river that carves its way through a stone canyon, not through a single violent explosion, but through the persistent, intelligent, and relentless application of its will over time. To outmaneuver everyone, you must first learn to outmaneuver the predictable, emotional, and ego-driven impulses that rage within yourself. Only then can the fog of your own noise clear, allowing you to see the world as it truly is, a landscape of hidden paths and decisive opportunities, entirely invisible to everyone else. For attempting to outperform others in their game is to accept their rules and fight for the scraps from their table. The true master constructs his own banquet in the quiet halls of his mind. Comment "I transcend the game" to declare your mastery of this principle, and subscribe for the coming lessons on the art of deception. You have committed to transcending the game. You have chosen the quiet path of observation over the noisy road of participation. This is the first and most critical separation of the master from the masses. But silence alone is not a strategy. It is merely the soil in which strategy grows. To cultivate true power, you must now construct the pillars of your new mental fortress, the foundational laws that will govern your every thought and action. These are not mere tactics to be deployed. They are principles to be embodied. They are the invisible architecture of inevitable victory. The first three laws govern your preparation, your perception, and the preservation of your most vital resource. They are the laws of the unseen war. The first law is the bedrock of all strategy. Know the terrain and know yourself. Sun Tzu stated, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." The modern world, however, has dangerously misinterpreted this wisdom. It focuses almost exclusively on the first half, knowing the enemy. It promotes a culture of opposition research, of analyzing your competitor's weaknesses, of seeking leverage over others. This is a shallow and incomplete understanding. The strategist knows that understanding the external landscape is secondary to the far more difficult and crucial task of understanding the internal one. Knowing the terrain is not just about mapping your rival's position. It is about achieving a state of radical clarity about the very nature of the ground on which you stand. This terrain is the unwritten rules of your office, the hidden currents of desire in your social circle, the invisible architecture of power that dictates who is heard and who is ignored. The average person navigates this terrain blindly, reacting to its bumps and obstacles as they appear. The master, however, studies it like a grand architect. He sees the load-bearing walls of hierarchy, the faulty foundations of popular opinion, and the secret passages of influence that are invisible to the untrained eye. He does not simply exist within the system, he perceives its design. But this external map is useless without an internal compass. The second and more profound half of this law is to know yourself. This is the great and terrible work that almost no one is willing to do. It is a journey into the uncharted wilderness of your own mind, an unflinching reconnaissance of your own limitations. It means cataloging not just your strengths, but your vanities, your emotional triggers, your insecurities, and the subtle addictions to comfort and validation that secretly govern your decisions. Where does your ego demand to be fed? What slights are you unable to ignore? Under what pressures does your logic crack and your fear take command? The average man lives his entire life as a stranger to himself, driven by impulses he doesn't understand. He builds a carefully constructed facade of who he wishes he was, and then spends all his energy defending this fragile illusion. The strategist, by contrast, seeks brutal, unvarnished truth. He knows that any weakness he does not confront within himself will one day be discovered and exploited by an opponent. Your unexamined pride is a handle for others to grasp. Your unmastered fear is a button for them to push. To know yourself is to disarm your enemy before they even arrive. This dual knowledge of the external terrain and the internal landscape fuses into a state of radical clarity. This clarity is a light that cuts through the fog of emotion and confusion in which everyone else is lost. It allows you to see events not as personal attacks or strokes of luck, but as the simple, impersonal unfolding of cause and effect. It is the source of the strategist's legendary calm. He is not surprised by betrayal or failure, for he has already mapped the fault lines of loyalty and the probabilities of risk. He moves through the world with a quiet confidence, not because he believes he will always win, but because he knows he will never be caught by surprise. The second law flows directly from the first. Win without fighting. This principle is the strategist's art of supreme efficiency. Your clarity has revealed to you a world filled with endless, meaningless conflicts. Your society, your biology, and your ego will scream at you to engage in them all. This is the path of the novice, to treat every challenge as a battle that must be won. The master understands a more profound truth. Your focused energy is your single most precious currency. It is more valuable than time, more potent than money. Every ounce of it you expend on a pointless struggle is an ounce you cannot deploy on the objective that truly matters. Therefore, the strategist becomes a ruthless economist of his own power. He observes the battles of ego in the workplace, the circular arguments online, the frantic jockeying for social status, and he makes a conscious, deliberate choice to refuse participation. This is not passivity, it is strategic disengagement. It is the wisdom of the mountain that allows the storm to rage against its slopes. The wind howls, the clouds clash, but the storm eventually exhausts itself. The mountain remains unmoved and undiminished. When you refuse to fight on your opponent's terms, a remarkable thing happens. You deny them the very conflict they need to feel powerful. An aggressor who meets no resistance is left punching at the air, looking foolish and wasting his own strength. An ego that seeks to belittle you and finds no emotional reaction is left starved of the validation it craves. You outmaneuver them by simply refusing to enter the arena they have prepared for you. You let them win the arguments that do not matter. You cede the ground that has no strategic value. You allow them to believe they have scored a victory, all while you are preserving 100% of your energy for the decisive moment. While they are celebrating their triumph in a meaningless skirmish, you are moving your pieces into position for checkmate. This requires a level of self-control that is almost superhuman. The instinct to retaliate, to correct, to have the last word, is a powerful one. To master this law is to master that instinct. You must learn to derive a quiet satisfaction from watching others burn their own empires to the ground in pursuit of small, fleeting victories. You conserve your fire for the one target, the one moment, where a single focused blast will reshape the entire battlefield in your favor. The third law provides the cloak for your movements. All warfare is based on deception. Here again, the modern mind falls into a vulgar interpretation. It thinks of deception as the act of telling lies, of spreading disinformation, of crude manipulation. These are the clumsy tools of a common charlatan, not a master strategist. For Sun Tzu, deception is a far more elegant and profound art. It is not about creating falsehoods. It is about controlling perception by mastering the flow of truth. It is the power of strategic discretion. In an age that fetishizes radical transparency and rewards the constant confession of every thought and feeling, the strategist understands that this is a catastrophic strategic liability. To reveal everything is to become completely predictable, and to be predictable is to be vulnerable. The master, therefore, practices a deliberate and calculated opacity. He does not lie. He simply does not speak. He does not boast of his ambitions. He lets his results appear as if from nowhere. He does not telegraph his moves. He cultivates an aura of quiet, calm unpredictability. This is the principle of being formless. When you are formless, you present no clear surface for your opponent to strike. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their own anxieties back at them. Your lack of a predictable pattern forces them to guess, to imagine, to fear. They will exhaust their own mental resources, trying to decipher your intentions, often attributing to you far more complex and nefarious plans than you actually possess. You allow their imagination to become your greatest ally. This law is executed not through complex schemes, but through simple, disciplined habits. It is the discipline to work on a project in secret until it is ready for launch. It is the restraint to absorb an insult without revealing that it has landed. It is the wisdom to keep your grand vision locked away behind a calm and unassuming exterior. While others are busy narrating their journey, you are busy walking the path. When your victory finally arrives, it will appear to the world as a sudden, almost magical event. They will not have seen the thousands of hours of silent preparation, the countless battles you chose not to fight, the ruthless self-analysis that gave you your clarity. They will only see the result. And because they cannot trace its origins, they will attribute it not to hard work, but to innate, untouchable power. This perception becomes your shield, a reputation that enters the room long before you do, ensuring that future battles are won before they can even begin. You have now laid the foundation. You have embraced the silence that grants clarity. You have mastered the economy of energy that preserves your strength, and you have cloaked your intentions in the impenetrable veil of discretion. These are the external mechanics of strategy. But a fortress with strong walls is useless if its commander is prone to panic and indecision. A sharp sword is a liability in the hands of a man who lacks the discipline to control his own rage. We now turn inward, from the theater of operations to the throne room of the mind. For the most dangerous and decisive battlefield you will ever command is the one that exists behind your own eyes. The next three laws are not about influencing others. They are about forging an unbreakable will within yourself. They are the principles that transform a clever tactician into a truly indomitable force. The fourth law is your shield in the heart of turmoil. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. For the average person, chaos is a synonym for terror. An unexpected crisis, a sudden market collapse, a betrayal from a trusted ally. These events trigger an immediate and overwhelming emotional cascade. Fear, anger, and confusion flood the mind, short-circuiting all higher-level reasoning. The reaction is primitive and predictable: fight, flight, or freeze. In this state, a human being is no more of a strategist than a startled animal. They make disastrous decisions based on incomplete information and raw emotion. They lash out, they retreat in panic, or they simply become paralyzed, unable to act at all. This is the natural human response, and it is the single greatest point of leverage for the master strategist. The master understands a secret and transformative truth. Chaos is not the enemy. Chaos is a tool. It is a smokescreen that blinds and confuses your opponents, while providing perfect cover for your own decisive movements. To wield this law, you must first achieve a profound victory over your own nervous system. You must cultivate a state of unshakable inner calm, an island of stillness in the center of the hurricane. This is not a natural state. It is forged through relentless discipline and practice. It is the practice of observing your own rising fear without becoming possessed by it. It is the ability to feel the surge of anger without allowing it to dictate your next action. When chaos erupts, the strategist does not see a threat. He sees a system returning to a state of flux. Alliances become fragile. Established hierarchies crumble. The rigid rules of the old game are temporarily suspended. In this moment of universal disorientation, the mind that remains calm and analytical is granted a form of temporary omniscience. While everyone else is reacting to the deafening noise of the immediate crisis, the strategist is listening to the subtle music of second and third order consequences. He sees the new paths that are being carved by the disruption. He identifies the unique, fleeting opportunities that are invisible to minds clouded by panic. The collapse of a rival company is not a disaster, it is a sudden influx of available talent. A public humiliation is not the end. It is a chance to shed a false persona and rebuild on a foundation of authentic strength. This ability to see opportunity in pandemonium is what separates the leader from the led, the survivor from the victim. You do not pray for the storm to pass. You learn to dance in the rain, to harness the wind, and to use the lightning flash to illuminate the path forward. The fifth law is your weapon against predictability. Be without form. Sun Tzu taught that the ultimate skill is to be like water. Water has no fixed shape. It can be gentle and yielding, flowing around obstacles, or it can be a force of immense, crushing power. It adapts perfectly and instantly to its container. This is the antithesis of the modern ideal, which encourages you to build a personal brand, a rigid, unchanging identity that is easily recognizable and marketable. People become prisoners of their own personas. The tough negotiator cannot show vulnerability. The creative genius cannot afford to have a conventional idea. They build a cage for themselves and then decorate it, calling it a personality. This makes them brittle and, above all, predictable. A predictable opponent is a defeated opponent. The strategist, therefore, refuses to be defined. He resists the urge to be categorized, to be given a single, convenient label. He is the embodiment of supreme adaptability. To be formless is to hold your plans and your identity with a light grip. It is the understanding that your strategy is a hypothesis, not a sacred text. When the terrain changes, you must be willing to abandon your beautiful map without a moment's hesitation. This requires the death of a certain kind of ego, the ego that becomes attached to being right, the ego that ties its self-worth to a particular plan or ideology. The formless strategist's loyalty is not to the plan, but to the objective. If the direct path is blocked, he will flow to the left. If the left is fortified, he will seep under from the right. He will be aggressive in one moment and yielding in the next. He will be eloquent and visible when it serves his purpose, and silent and invisible when it does not. This constant flux makes him impossible to target. How can you attack an enemy who is never in the same place twice? How can you counter a strategy that changes its shape the moment you think you have understood it? You become a phantom in your opponent's mind. They will prepare for a frontal assault only to find you have already infiltrated their supply lines. They will build walls to contain you, only to discover you have already risen above them as vapor. This adaptability is not a lack of principle. It is the ultimate expression of a single, unshakable principle: victory by any means necessary. You flow, you adapt, you transform, and in your unpredictability, you become invincible. The sixth and final law of internal mastery is the one that orchestrates all the others. Timing is everything. The impulsive amateur acts when he feels the urge. The hesitant procrastinator acts when it is already too late. The master strategist acts only at the shibi, the opportune moment. This is a concept of timing that goes far beyond simple patience. It is a deep, intuitive sense of the rhythm of events, of knowing when to apply pressure and when to release it. It is the understanding that the same action can lead to glorious victory or utter ruin, depending entirely on the moment of its execution. The quality of the decision, Sun Tzu wrote, is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. The falcon does not waste its energy in constant, frantic flight. It soars, it circles, it observes. It waits for the precise instant its prey is most vulnerable, most exposed. Then and only then does it dive. The attack is swift, committed, and devastating. The victory is clean and efficient because the timing was perfect. Cultivating this sense of timing requires you to silence the incessant demands of your own impatience. The modern world trains you for speed, for immediate responses, for constant action. The strategist must retrain himself for patience. This is not the passive patience of waiting for something to happen. It is the active, predatory patience of a sniper. You have your target in your sights. You have calculated the variables. You are ready to act, but you wait. You wait for the wind to die down. You wait for the target to step into the open. You wait for that single, fleeting moment of perfect alignment. This discipline, the ability to hold immense potential energy in reserve, is one of the most intimidating forms of power. Others, governed by their impatience, will act too soon, revealing their intentions and wasting their advantage. Or they will hesitate for too long, paralyzed by fear, and the window of opportunity will slam shut. You, the master of timing, will appear to do nothing for long stretches. You will be underestimated. You will be seen as hesitant or irrelevant. Let them think this. Their misjudgment is a crucial part of your strategy, for when the opportune moment finally arrives, you will unleash all your conserved energy in a single, decisive and unstoppable action. And in the stunned silence that follows, they will finally understand that your inaction was not a sign of weakness, but the calm, terrifying focus of a predator about to strike. You have journeyed through the labyrinth of the mind. You have learned the laws of clarity, of energy preservation, of discretion. You have forged the internal discipline to remain calm in chaos, to be adaptable as water, and to act with the lethal precision of a falcon. You have assembled the components of a flawless war machine, but an engine, no matter how perfect, is worthless until its power is engaged. Now, before we reveal how these 6 timeless laws converge into the moment of inevitable victory, ensure you are subscribed, for the final wisdom is reserved for those dedicated enough to complete the entire journey to mastery. The student has learned the principles. The master must now learn to apply them in the final, decisive act. This is the moment of execution. In the mind of the novice, this is envisioned as a climactic, violent confrontation, a boardroom showdown, a public debate, a dramatic severing of ties. The strategist knows this vision is a crude fantasy. The decisive blow, when delivered according to the principles of Sun Tzu, is rarely loud. It is often silent, subtle, and so efficient that the opponent may not even realize the war is lost until long after the fact. This is not an attack, it is a resolution. It is the inevitable outcome of all your silent preparation. Having mastered the 6 laws, you now see the battlefield with a God's eye view. Your clarity, Law 1, allows you to see the critical vulnerability in your opponent's position, a weakness born of their own arrogance, fear, or impatience. Your cultivated calm in the heart of chaos, Law 4, allows you to recognize the perfect moment to act, a window of opportunity created by the very turmoil that has paralyzed everyone else. And because you have mastered timing, Law 6, you have waited with predatory patience for this exact instant. Your opponent, operating on a lower level of consciousness, has made a fatal error. Perhaps they overextended their resources in a fit of pride. Perhaps they alienated a key ally through their emotional outbursts. Perhaps they simply grew complacent, lulled into a false sense of security by your formless and unassuming posture. Law 5. They have, in essence, defeated themselves. Your role is not to crush them, but simply to give a gentle, final push to the structure they themselves have destabilized. The action you take is precise and economical. Having conserved your energy by avoiding meaningless conflicts, Law 2, you now have an immense reservoir of power to deploy. While your opponent is exhausted from fighting 1,000 phantom battles, you are at peak strength. Your decisive move is executed with the full force of your focused will. It might be a single, well-placed email that exposes a critical flaw in their plan. It could be a quiet alliance you formed while they were busy making noise. It could even be the strategic act of doing nothing at all, allowing them to walk directly into a trap of their own making. The hallmark of a master's execution is its effortlessness. To the outside observer, your victory will look like a stroke of incredible luck. They will not see the intricate architecture of cause and effect you have been building in the shadows. They will not comprehend that your luck was the calculated meeting point of preparation and opportunity. You did not engage in their brawls. You did not play their games of ego. You simply waited, you observed, and you acted with the irrefutable force of a natural law. Cloaked in deception, the strategic discretion you have mastered, Law 3, your final maneuver is unseen until it is unstoppable. There is no grand announcement, no declaration of war. There is only the quiet click of the final tumbler falling into place. The lock opens. The game is over. What follows the decisive act is perhaps the most critical and misunderstood phase of strategy, the consolidation of victory and the establishment of a lasting peace. The amateur, upon winning, celebrates. He boasts, he gloats, he seeks to humiliate his vanquished foe. This is a foolish and dangerous indulgence of the ego. It sows the seeds of resentment and guarantees future conflicts. The master strategist does not celebrate, he simply observes. He watches the consequences of his actions ripple outwards, calmly making the minor adjustments necessary to guide the outcome toward his desired end state. The goal was never the fleeting thrill of victory. The goal was the creation of a new, more favorable reality. The objective is not merely to win the battle, but to create a peace on your terms, a peace so stable and so clearly weighted in your favor that future challenges are dissuaded before they are even conceived. Your reputation, forged in the crucible of the conflict, now becomes your primary instrument of power. You did not win by being the loudest or the most aggressive. You won by being the calmest, the most disciplined, and the most perceptive. This creates an aura of mystique and untouchable competence around you. Potential rivals will look upon your example and hesitate. They saw how your previous opponent, who operated on the conventional principles of noise and aggression, simply collapsed. They cannot map the pathway of your victory, and what they cannot understand, they will learn to fear. Your power becomes structural. It is baked into the new system. You have shaped the terrain to such a degree that conflict becomes an illogical and self-destructive choice for any would-be challenger. This is the ultimate victory of Sun Tzu, not a throne won by the sword, but a throne that no one dares to approach. It is the power that transcends the need to use power. And so we arrive at the final philosophical conclusion. The journey of the strategist, which begins with the desire to outmaneuver everyone, ends with a profound realization. The everyone you needed to outmaneuver was, from the very beginning, yourself. It was your own ego, your own impatience, your own fear, and your own predictable reactions. The 6 laws are not a manual for manipulating others. They are a blueprint for the reconstruction of the self. By conquering your own internal chaos, you gain the ability to navigate the chaos of the world. By making yourself formless, you become immune to the rigidities that shatter others. By mastering your own energy, you become a force of nature. To outmaneuver everyone was the bait, the superficial desire that started you on this path. The real prize is not dominance over others, but sovereignty over yourself. This is the source of a power that is quiet, profound, and permanent. It is the power to shape reality, not through force, but through a superior understanding of its fundamental laws. You did not win their game. You transcended it entirely, and in doing so, you created a game of your own, where you are the only player, and the only possible outcome is peace. The truest power is not the roar of the lion, but the silence of the mountain that watches the empires of lions rise and fall.